Hello and welcome to the Meet the Parents podcast.
Hello and welcome to episode 25 of the Meet the Parents podcast, bringing you your weekly half hour of discussion from some of the UK's top parents bloggers. I'm Tim from Slouching Towards Thatcham, and this evening I'll be talking to Dave, the dad venturer. Hi Dave.
Hey Tim, how you doing?
Very well, thank you. So on this week's podcast, we're going to chat about how we teach our kids about the big wide world, and in particular some of its less savoury aspects in the aftermath of the terrorist attack in Nice. And we'll also talk about the role that music plays in our kids' lives, and Dave's penchant for the film Pitch Perfect. But before we start on this week's main topics, given that this week's edition is an all-dads affair, we couldn't really go on without passing comment on some of the things said by former Tory leadership candidate and now Secretary of State for the Environment, Farming and Rural Affairs, Andrea Leadsom, as part of the now infamous interview she did with The Times during the leadership contest, in which she implied that being a mother made her a better candidate than Theresa May. She also made the following unpublished declaration. Most of us don't employ men as nannies. I call that cautious and very sensible when you look at the stats. We know paedophiles are attracted to working with children. I'm sorry, but they're the facts. So, Dave, as a stay-at-home dad who is the primary carer for a toddler daughter, what did you make of that statement?
Well, she's spot on, isn't she? Obviously, I'm a pedo because I'm at home with my daughter every day. Oh, it's ridiculous, isn't it? I think, end of the day, paedophiles can be men or women. There's so many examples when you Google something about women grooming kids, whether it's teachers who've slept with the pupils or things like that. So statements like this, they're just ridiculous, and they don't do anything but tarnish the good work done by thousands and thousands of men out there.
Yeah, and I think it only really serves to tarnish the person who said it even more, doesn't it? And, I have to say, you have to wonder just how hygienic it is for anyone to insert their foot into their mouth with such regularity. I mean, that aside, while I recognise that anyone in a public position is going to slip up or be taken out of context every now and then, I do find it astonishing that anyone who has the same mastery of diplomacy and tact as I have of rocket science could ever have been one step away from essentially being the CEO of the world's fifth largest economy. It's bad enough that she has a seat at the cabinet table, although admittedly the DEFRA job is kind of the equivalent of being given the last table at a restaurant squeezed in between the doors to the kitchen and the doors to the toilets. There is a reason I now refer to her as Andrea Loathsome. If this is the wisdom and perspective that being a mother gives you, then I am really sorry for the bad name that she gives all the good mothers out there everywhere. So anyhow, that was a party political broadcast on behalf of the Meet the Parents party. Now let's get on with the show. So, in the early weeks and months of a child's life, their world consists of little more than their parents and the familiar surroundings of home. But that soon changes as they become increasingly mobile, aware of their surroundings, and they start to develop their language skills. Now, Dave and my kids are of quite different ages. My three are aged between 4 and 8, while Dave's daughter isn't yet 2. So Dave, Toddlerell she's fast approaching her second birthday, isn't she?
She is, yes.
So if you look back, say, a year ago, or around about the time she turned 1, have you noticed how much more she's noticing and interacting with the world around her?
Yeah, it's absolutely crazy. The thinking back to what she was like at 1 versus now, it's like a totally different person. When people ask me how she's doing, I just sort of say that, like, the best way to describe it is she's an actual kid now. What she does and how she does things is just it's just what you see a kid do of like 4, 5, 6. And I know she's not got the language there and things like that yet, but seeing how her mind works and everything she takes in, it's crazy, and it's changing every single day.
Yeah, and I remember at this age they can really surprise you, can't they, with how much they are taking in, just when you think that they're not noticing things, and then they'll turn around and make it quite obvious that they've noticed everything that's going on around them in a way that they wouldn't have done a few months ago.
Exactly, and I think it's the memory as well. It's, say she puts some shoes somewhere, she'll then, if I say, 6 hours later on, oh, where are your shoes? She'll know where they are. And it's things like that, which, go back a few months ago, she didn't have any concept of memory and what she'd done, but now it's just like a person.
It's a wonderful time, isn't it, when their memories are still developing and relatively uncluttered and not full of the kind of football trivia that they become filled with in later life.
Exactly, and it also means that they'll forget everything you're doing at this age where you're messing up and things.
So what kind of things are you doing with her now, and what kind of places are you going to that you weren't doing maybe, a few months ago?
I don't actually think that what we're doing and how we're doing things has changed that much, say, like over the last 6 months. We do a lot of toddler classes, so we go to the likes of Walk Babies and Tumble Tots, and every week I'm seeing a massive change in like her gross motor skills and how she listens and her confidence when it comes to things. So it almost feels like what we do is the same to an extent, but it's how we interact with what we're doing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that rings a lot of bells to when ours were of a similar age as well.
Yeah, but having said that, we do other things. We're doing a lot more sort of imaginative play type stuff at the moment. So what I've noticed over the last couple of weeks is she's doing a lot more mimicking. So cooking in a play kitchen and giving me cups for us to drink from. And the other day we spent probably best part of half an hour walking dogs around the house and stuff like that. So it's really sweet at this age where you see that they pick things up from what you do in everyday life and then mimic it themselves.
I'd say it won't be long until you're getting her to make you a cup of tea and mow the lawn. And
well, that's the goal. That's why we have kids, isn't it?
Yeah, just don't tell them. So with all the development that's going on, is there anything that you actively think, actually, no, she's not ready for that yet? So, whether it's doing something or maybe seeing something that's on the telly or something like that, or is she just addicted to Game of Thrones now?
There's nothing at the moment, if I'm honest. I think I'm very conscious that she's taking on things and, like I say, the memory, and she's very aware of everything. So it's something which I think I'm going to have to actively introduce this filter in the not too distant future. But at the moment, she does what she wants when she wants type thing. Like the other day we were sat down watching Preacher, and there was a particularly bloody scene where I think someone got stabbed and then had their head chopped off. And that made me think, actually, she maybe shouldn't be sat on my lap watching this.
Yes, we've had similar discussions in our household in the past as well. So is there anything in particular that you're really looking forward to introducing her to over the next year or so?
I think sports are a big one for me. She, like I mentioned before, she's already doing tumble tots and water babies, so that's gymnastics and swimming, and she's recently started doing football with little kickers too. But I'm quite looking forward to when she's that little bit older and we can sort of have more competitive games of badminton and tennis and squash and things like that. I think that's something which me and my mum used to do a lot when I was younger, and I'm really looking forward to that. But obviously, I could start with her now playing badminton and things, and that'd guarantee victory. But I think that's probably not too fair for her.
Now, I don't want there to be any sulking or tantrums from you, when she wins.
Yeah, it's bound to happen, isn't
it? So that sounds okay. It doesn't sound like there's an imminent visit from Child Protection Services on the horizon or anything like that.
Not again, no. So what about you, Tim? You mentioned that your kids are of different age ranges. Is there anything that you allow your boys to do that Cara isn't allowed to do?
Yeah, so the boys are 8 and 6 now, and Cara is 4. So, there's a lot of things like the boys have a load of iPad games downloaded, Minecraft and that sort of thing that they're allowed to play that Cara definitely isn't yet, although increasingly she is starting to get more and more involved in finding and playing the game. She's quite adept at switching the thing on and finding whatever she wants. And then we were talking about TV just now as well, and we haven't we haven't really had to segregate them yet. The boys will still actually quite happily watch a lot of Cara's, CBeebies programs, even though Isaac in particular has really outgrown it. Now, I don't know if you watch this in your household, but all three of them are currently addicted to the geography-based program Go Jetters.
Yeah, it's one of those things that's on in the background, but I don't think I've actively ever watched it, although Elle often goes, go, 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 which it makes me realise that program's on.
Yeah, and Cara watches it because it's fun, while the boys kind of watch it because they're interested in learning about all the landmarks they visit and the places they go. And there are some more grown-up programs that attract the boys. I mean, they're a sucker for any reality TV shows that involve, London or the Underground, the kind of day in the life type programs. And some of those have content that isn't necessarily suitable. Well, actually, it's not that suitable for the boys either, but it's definitely not suitable for Cara. But then she isn't really interested in those anyway, so it's kind of self-censoring. Although I have a couple of times mistakenly allowed them to watch programs and realised that they've had footage of people coming out of football matches and things like that, where the language is, shall we say, a little bit on the industrial side.
Yeah, exactly.
So, oops.
So would you say then that the boys can cope with a lot more than Cara then, or?
Yeah, for the most part, as you'd expect because they're older. But funnily enough, we have found that there are some things where it's the other way round, where there are some things that the boys struggle to cope with that Cara is fine with, or, it's stuff that just goes over her head because she isn't really old enough yet to understand, particularly fear. So kids' films are a really good example of this, I think. These days, any children's film is pretty sophisticated and it works on a lot of different levels, for younger kids, for older kids, and for adults as well. And for all the humour that is a big part of your U and your PG rated films, a lot of them still feature some quite adult themes, and even the mild peril that they warn you about can be quite scary when you have a child like Isaac who's quite sensitive and empathetic anyway. And I can remember going with him and Toby a couple of years back to watch it must have been Planes 2, which basically ends with a massive forest fire. Okay, it's life-threatening insofar that the lives being threatened are animated planes and cars, but the concept's still quite a scary one to a small child who's sophisticated enough to understand the danger of fire but can't quite separate fact from fiction at that point. And the other example that springs to mind is Paddington. So Cara adores the Paddington film, but the boys couldn't watch the scenes at the end when Nicole Kidman's character is trying to catch Paddington and stuff him. And Isaac still dissolves into tears at the sadder parts of Inside Out when the joy of the central character's younger core memories become tinged with sadness. Now, obviously, that's completely meaningless to anyone that hasn't seen any of those films.
And you've ruined a lot of films for people that are probably going to sit down tonight and watch it.
Yeah, I should have put a spoiler alert in, shouldn't I?
So you talk about some of the images in things like films. What about in real life? So obviously we've had the Nice attacks over the last week or so. How do you deal with that with your kids? Do you expose them to it?
It's really tricky, especially at the kind of age that the boys are at now. So, 6 and 8. I mean, Isaac as the older one he is definitely at the age now where he is starting to take quite an active interest in what's happening in the outside world, whereas Cara at 4 is still a bit too young, and Toby is old enough, but he's just not bothered. As a rule, we tend not to have the TV news on in the house while the kids are awake. It's not that we don't want the kids to know, only that we really want to be kind of in control of it a little bit more and to be able to tell them on our terms. If I go back to the Paris attacks last year, we didn't talk to the kids about them at first, and then we were out in the car and Isaac's ears pricked up when he heard a radio news report talking about all the deaths. And then a whole load of questions came out that put me right on the back foot, but at least I was able to explain what had happened a little bit before he started to see any of the disturbing details or images that were within easy reach on TV or online. It's a really tough one to judge how much to tell kids and at what age to tell them. We don't want to put them in a bubble and hide the world from them, but equally it's a case of not being able to put the cork back into the bottle once it's been taken out, and not taking their innocence away too soon, I guess. So there you have it. We want to educate our kids about the world, but maybe sitting in front of the TV with a non-stop diet of the 10 o'clock news and Game of Thrones isn't ideal for one's state of mind. And it's probably not great for the kids either. There now follows a party political broadcast on behalf of the Meet the Parents Party. If you're fed up of all the politicians after the EU referendum, why not consider switching your support to the newly formed Meet the Parents Party? We don't make manifesto promises we don't intend to keep. When we say we stand for family values, we really mean it. Politically, we're not so much Theresa May as James May. We think Richard Hammond would make a better Chancellor of the Exchequer than Philip Hammond. And we think Jeremy Clarkson would still be a less offensive Foreign Secretary than Bojo. A vote for the Meet the Parents Party is a vote for a brighter future and a better Britain. One of the recent spoof ads I recorded for the podcast was a dads-based riff on the a cappella singing group the Barden-Bellas from the music-based film Pitch Perfect. Now this was entirely Dave's fault, as the idea for it came from a discussion on Twitter late one night when he admitted he'd been watching and enjoying the film. So Dave, I suppose just for the benefit of anyone who hasn't seen it, can you just quickly summarise what the film's about?
Yep, no problem. So, off the top of my head, the Barden-Bellas, who are all-girls a cappella singing group thriving on female pop songs and their perfect looks, after a disastrous failing at last year's finals, they are forced to regroup. Among the new recruits is freshman Becca, an independent, aspiring DJ with no interest in college life. But after she meets Jessie from the rival or male a cappella group, Becca has a new outlook and takes it upon herself to help the Bellas find their new look and sound and get back into the competition.
It's funny, I've always pictured you a little bit more as Glee Club rather than Barbershop Quartet.
I'm easy. I could do either.
Talking about music then, has it historically played much of a role in your life, and is it something that Elle responds to?
Yeah, so first question, for me, yeah, music's always been important. 11, 12 is when I started getting into music and not just listening to whatever my mum and dad had on in the car. So that's when I started buying my own tapes and later into CDs and things like that. But it was probably more uni when I started getting into a bit more like rock music and stuff like that and started going to more gigs and everything. So since then, I tend to listen to the same stuff that I used to listen to in 2001, which is quite scary. But I get Elle into the same stuff. So, you know, a lot of time during the day, I'll have like Blink-182 blaring or Don Brocco, one of my favourite bands at the moment, and we'll just like dance along and be stupid to it and stuff. So, yeah, I think as she gets older, music will play a bigger part in her life because it does with us, really.
Yeah, and music's always been a big part of my life as well. But I have to admit, I'm probably starting to get a little bit old and out of touch now. It's been a while since I could automatically tell you everything that's in the top 10 at the moment, for instance. And as the kids will quite happily tell you, I'm always listening to absolute 80s in the car. So I kind of live on a constant diet of Billy Idol, Billy Ocean and Billy Joel. So, and as you know, I have a liking for singing my own version of well-known pop songs, particularly those from the 80s with, 300 or 400 of my closest friends. But as for the kids, all three of them they've also loved music from a really young age, whether it's singing along to tunes on the radio or the theme tune to their latest TV obsessions. So I mentioned the CBeebies programme Go Jetters earlier, and that's the current favourite, and they sing the theme from that over and over and over again. But
that sounds painful.
Yeah, it can be. It's almost as bad as the Let It Go phase. But when it comes to pop music, I do think they each have some kind of inbuilt sensor that detects when a song predates a certain year. It's probably about 2007 or 2008, because the boys will immediately demand that I put on something else. When they hear an all-time pop classic such as, I don't know, the Joe Dolce Music Theatre or, Wakefield. Cara's the only one of the three who doesn't turn up her nose immediately at an older song. Good taste, that girl. So is there much singing that goes on in the car or in the privacy of the bathroom or shower?
It's probably more when we go to the toddler classes. Most of them will have like a singing element to it, so like sitting around in a circle singing Wheels on the Bus, or when we're at Water Babies, that's very much themed around music as well. So tend to just sort of sing those when we're like back home as well and things. So at the moment it's quite cute because Elle, like for Wheels on the Bus, she'll be like going round on round on round on round type thing for the wheels, and she started doing Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, so she almost like sings it to the right tune, but she obviously can't say the words yet, so it's like twinkle twinkle, and then it just like goes into her just saying any old babble, but it's quite cute.
We do increasingly have what Cara always announces as family sings in the car. Yeah, she does seem to have a particular liking for female vocalists, and I am grateful that we're now not constantly listening to the Frozen soundtrack on a repeating loop, which we did for probably a good 18 months.
And then the kids got bored of it, and you had to turn it off, yeah?
Yeah, something like that. So on her playlist in the car, you'll hear a lot of a lot of Taylor Swift and Katy Perry, and as well as some less populist stuff. Although all three kids' current favourite is probably a track that I find intensely annoying. It's Shawn Mendes's Stitches, which they now perform together in perfect disharmony. Now, we're going away for a couple of weeks in the car at the back end of August, so I'm braced for a fortnight of listening to the same playlist of 20 or so songs over and over and over again. So so I might well be slightly doolally when we come back in September.
Well, enjoy that.
Yeah, I will. Have you ever played a musical instrument yourself?
I have. Did you not know about this?
I don't think I did.
I got to grade 8 standard on the trumpet when I was at school.
What made you take up the trumpet?
My mum forcing me to do an instrument.
And I'm sure you repaid her in spades.
Yeah. So my mum and side of the family have always been musical, so it was something which she wanted me to do. So I think I tried the oboe but didn't get on with that. Obviously played the recorder like most kids do, and then the trumpet was just something that stuck. So I went through from maybe 10 to 16 playing that, and just despised every moment and having to be made to be a band geek and everything like that.
But you got all the way to grade 8.
Yeah. So I was obviously pretty decent here. I never took the grade 8 exam, but I could have done. I'd passed 6 and then was at the standard of 8. But then I hopefully got some cool points when I went to uni and tried to teach myself the guitar.
So have you ever felt like taking it up again?
Time and time again, it'd be quite cool just to sort of like pick it up and see if I can remember the solo from Hakuna Matata and stuff like that. But no, it was very much, like I say, something that was forced upon me to an extent rather than something I enjoyed.
Okay. Yeah, it's funny. I was quite similar. I played the flute for 5 years in school, and I didn't really regret giving it up. I mean, I was competent, but I was never actually much good. Although, I do wish I was able to play the piano with a bit more than 2 fingers, or at least something vaguely useful or cool. So, yeah. Do you think that taking up music is something you might encourage Elle to do at some point?
I think, well, based on the experience that I was just talking about with my mum, both me and Hay don't ever want to get to the point where we're forcing Elle to do anything. I actually wrote a post recently about football and the perception of that dads have with their daughters, and it actually turns out that there was a survey done, and a lot of dads don't see football as a sport that they'd encourage their daughters to do, which to me is quite crazy, because I sort of think Elle can try anything and do anything if she wants to try an instrument, great. If she wants to try football, great. All I'm trying to do at the moment with the fact I say, she does water babies and tumble tots and all of these various things, is allowing her to have experiences of different things, and then when she's old enough, she can then choose the ones which she enjoys.
With Isaac, we tried to encourage him to take up a musical instrument without trying to force it on him. And to be fair, actually, he's been really keen. He's been playing the piano for about 18 months, and he also took up the viola this year. And actually, we thought he'd give up one or the other this summer, but he actually seems to be quite happy to continue with both, which we're more than happy to support. And I think it's great for him, as it's something that he's quite good at, but it doesn't necessarily come naturally to him in the way that a lot of his kind of academic schoolwork does. And it's definitely teaching him a little bit about perseverance and kind of stretching himself a little bit. And I'm just about good enough that we can play duets together on the piano. Well, I say duets, actually duet. I actually only know one piece, and it's not even Chopsticks. It's Hoagie Carmichael's Heart and Soul, which is probably best known as the duet that Tom Hanks plays jumping about on the giant floor keyboard in the film Big. And there's me with my 1980s references again that go straight over everyone's heads.
You pick up some good points though with the instrument thing. Even though it may sound a bit like I resent the fact I was made to play one, I think you do learn some sort of really important life skills as a kid with that type of thing. So you picked up on perseverance and determination and learning something new and being put in situations where you're relied upon if you're in a band and things like that. And I think there's all of that stuff which is good when it comes to instruments.
Yeah, and that's it'll be really interesting to see how much Isaac continues with it. Whether he gets frustrated when he gets to a certain level and doesn't progress, or whether it's something that he just enjoys and keeps doing. And equally, it'll be interesting to see if Toby and Cara follow suit and take up an instrument as well. And we're not going to force them to do it, but it would be a nice thing for them to do. As long as it's not the drums or that blasted clangers whistle that they gave out at VML.
Yeah, I soon made sure we got rid of that one.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm sure that happened with a lot of people. So that's our dad's guide to kids and music. Now, we're not so much the Bard and Bellas as the Beer Garden Fellas, and we're probably more Drunken Fella than a cappella, but we do like a bit of music, even if it's not always in tune. So, before we go, what else have we been up to recently, Dave?
Well, on Sunday, Elle had her first experience of the cinema. We were invited along to the Finding Dory screening, so that was quite cool. We lasted, maybe just over an hour before she was getting, before her concentration went and stuff like that, which was more than we thought she would. Pretty decent for just under 2-year-old.
Yeah, it's pretty good going for her, because she's 22 months, isn't she?
23 now, just gone 23, yeah.
That is good going. I mean, with our kids, I think Isaac was 4.5, maybe almost 5, before he had the patience to sit through an entire film. And funny enough, with me, given that we've been talking about music just now over the last week, thanks largely to my precocious teenage goddaughter, I've spent most of this week listening to the soundtrack of Hamilton, which is, I don't know quite how you describe it. It's kind of a hip-hop musical based on the rise and fall of one of the United States founding fathers and its first Treasury Secretary, Alexander Hamilton, which, yes, I know it sounds ridiculous and dull, but it dominated the Tonys last month, picking up 11 awards, and honestly, it is amazing. Even more amazing, difficult as it may be to believe, than Pitch Perfect.
Whoa, don't be saying things that you can't prove, Tim.
And then this week, later this week, I am really stepping back into my 1980s pastime, off to London to see the Pet Shop Boys in concert, having last seen them all of 16 years ago, I think. And that's it for another episode of the Meet the Parents podcast. We're going to be away during August, enjoying our summer holidays, but we should be back refreshed and raring to go at the beginning of September. In the meantime, here's where you can find Dave and I online.
I am at thedadventurer.com and on Twitter at @the_dadventurer.
And you can find me at slouchingtowardsthatcham.com and on Twitter at ThatchamDad. Now, while we're away, you can download previous episodes of the podcast on iTunes and on Android devices, on our website at meettheparentspodcast.com, and via a variety of podcasting apps. And finally, do please give us a follow on Twitter at ParentsPodcast and on Facebook at facebook.com/meettheparentspodcast. So thank you for listening, and we'll be back again soon. Good night.